What's up, guys? It's Kane. Now, you might feel financially screwed in life, and the truth is, you're right. And it's actually on purpose. The entire system, as we know it, is designed to prey on normal, everyday people like you and me. But I want to show you how to fight against it and actually use the system for your own benefit. I want to show you how to be the hero of your own life. Because most of us, we can look around and see things aren't getting better. And in fact, they're getting worse. Now, I know we can all remember the good old days. I mean, pre 2020, back whenever fast food was actually cheap and housing was a dream that was actually achievable and somewhat affordable. But today, neither of those are still true. The true American dream fades away more and more every single day. And what's worse is while it's always harder for us, we are bombarded with news telling us how great the economy is and how the stock market is soaring and how corporate profits are hitting all-time highs. All of this while we're sitting and suffering, and no one really cares, and they really have never cared. So why do we feel screwed? Well, in short terms, it's inflation and the government always printing more money. Now, the issue isn't necessarily that the government is printing money, but it is where that money ends up going. Because whenever there's a major financial crisis, the government lowers interest rates and they print massive amounts of money. The two biggest examples is the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 pandemic. If you calculated how much money the government printed for and around the pandemic and you divided it between all Americans, that would equal about $40,000 each. And I don't know about you, but I sure as hell didn't get any of that 40,000. Besides the little stimulus checks that they gave to us so we could at least afford toilet paper, right? So the single biggest difference between the rich and the average person is that the rich are able to buy income producing assets that are constantly making them money. And most of us, let's be honest, we don't even own our own cars, let alone stocks or equity in companies. So just how bad is the government money printing problem? Well, since 1913, the dollar has lost almost 98% of its value. That means $100 in 1913 is only equivalent to about $3.87 today. Now, imagine how bad that's going to be another 100 years from now. Let's talk some numbers. Since 1985, the median real household wages have only increased about 36%, and that is less than 1% a year. Meanwhile, inflation has been between 3 and 5% a year during that entire time. And over those decades, that difference compounds over and over and over again. So no wonder none of us can keep up. And the reason why we can't keep up is all of this money printing always funnels its way up to the very top of society. The richest of the rich keep getting richer. Let's give a few facts. The average home price in the 80s was about $85,000, and today it's over $400,000. What about cars? They were around $10,000 back then, and today a new car is close to $50,000. Well, what about healthcare? That's something that we don't get to choose whether or not we need. It's something that we have to have. Well, in 1970, Americans spent close to $80 billion a year on healthcare. Today, it's almost $5 trillion. And before you want to say that that's inflation, even accounting for inflation, it is over 10 times higher than it should be. So what about colleges? Back then, about $1,500 a year. Today, a private college costs over $40,000 a year, and that's just the average. So how does this system really help the wealthy? So remember, the government has printed trillions of dollars over the past few decades, and especially whenever there have been times of financial crisis. The money that they print, they say, was supposed to go to us normal people to help us out, but that's never actually been the case. Instead, it went to the wealthiest Americans in America. it went to the banks, it went to corporations, and eventually it went into the stock market. Here's another fact. During the pandemic and the years following, the richest Americans' wealth increased by over $6 trillion. And at the same time, most of us could barely afford groceries. This means as inflation rises, it only hurts us, and it doesn't really affect those at the very top. Because as inflation increases, the price for the goods that the rich are selling increase too, because of monopolies and fixed supplies. As a result, their profits increase even more, which as a result increases the stock price and increases the amount of total wealth that these people have. Because the truth is, companies can keep raising prices, and assets like stocks or real estate, they'll hold or even grow their value over time because they're fixed assets. Meanwhile, if you're already living paycheck to paycheck, any increase in income you have is going to the groceries, it's going to your rent or gas or whatever you need. And at the end of the day, you never really feel or see that increase in money. The reason is the money you get, you're then having to pay the rich for the things that they're selling. That's why the stock market has soared over the last few decades, because all of this printed money over time funnels its way back to the stock market. All the while, normal households like ours, we're completely left out of all this benefit, and in fact, we're actually harmed. And that's intentional too. Listen, I am not the type of person that's going to say eat the rich or anything absurd like that. However, the truth is, the rich own the system. They pay our politicians through lobbyists, and they are the ones who are actually making the rules that we all play by. And you know they're not going to make any laws or rules that's going to end up costing them money. That's reality, and we really can't change that. But I don't want to tell you these things to crush your spirits and to make you feel hopeless. In fact, I want to tell you these things so then we can face these issues and then start to do things that will actually start to help us. This is why I think you have to invest in the stock market. That is why I don't think that there's a better or any other option for us normal people. Because in reality, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, neither one of them really care about us. Neither one of them are actually going to help us out. It's up to us. Because regardless of who's in office, they're always going to print money. Inflation is always going to be out of control. And they're never going to help us because they never have. Because every single time they bail out the banks or bail out the stock market or lower interest rates to nothing and print money, it all goes to the richest people and it completely misses us. Or if we do see it, it's only for a fleeting moment until we have to pay more for the things that we already couldn't afford. So, what can we do in this obvious one-sided rigged system? Well, there is hope and we do have tools. Now, you could always start your own business or be an entrepreneur, which if you're able to do that, great, do that. However, for most people, the main and only tool that we have is investing in income producing assets, the exact same ones that have made these billionaires so rich. We have our income. Now, I get it. The rich have a lot more income than we do. You know, they're out here using heavy equipment and we're out here with little tiny shovels. But we can do the same thing. Maybe not as big, but you can help yourself and you can change your life and affect the others around you too. You have to remember that by investing in shares of a company or just the overall stock market, what you're really doing is you are buying just a tiny part of that company. So you, as a part owner, will now get to share in the profits of that company. To me, we really only have two choices. The first one is to throw our hands up and completely give up and say, well, I'm broke now. I never want to do anything. I'm gonna be nothing and I am nothing, so there's no hope. I can't stand that. In fact, I hate that. Because what you should be doing is you should get mad. You should buckle down. You should start cutting your expenses. Start investing into the stock market so then you can share in the profits that they have been taking from you. You can use your income to buy into income producing assets like stocks or ETFs or index funds. Because once you own a small part of the system that's literally stealing your money, that's a way for you to get some of your money back. And guys, if the stock market seems too risky for you, I understand. Most people aren't taught about it, and that's 100% intentional because the stock market is dominated and owned by the billionaires, by the richest of the rich. But if the richest people own it and they have held it and owned it for the past 200 years, then it's probably a good thing for us to own as well. I mean, they keep on making so much money off of it, so why would we not want to use the same tools or the same methods that the richest people of the world do? If you think it's too risky, I want you to Google a chart of the S&P 500 and then zoom out to 5 years, 10 years, 100 years if you can. Now, you'll see that that chart, that line does go down sometimes. However, over the long run, it's a virtual guarantee that it will increase in value over time. Now, why do I say it is virtually guaranteed? Because if you buy a part of an index fund, that is a basket of a whole bunch of different stocks of companies, what you're essentially doing is you're betting that these companies will want to make more money in the future than they do today. Now, of course, there can be financial crisis. There can be global pandemics. There can be trade wars. There could be real wars. But in reality, all of these things are just short-term noise because the stock market will recover. And I say this because if the stock market never recovered from a crash, that would mean all of those companies in it have all decided that they never want to make any more money. Here's a fact. There has never been a period of over 20 years in the stock market that you would have lost money. This is the absolute worst case scenario in the entire stock market's history. And this also is without you investing any more money into it while it's down, and also without you reinvesting the dividends while it's still down. So if you have the correct outlook and understanding of what investing is, which is long-term investing, long-term wealth building with short-term decisions, it's really not a risk. Yes, stocks, individual companies can be volatile. They can go up and down, but over the long run, the trajectory is up and to the right. Just zoom out if you get stressed. Now, there are high-risk ways of trading, which are 100% gambling. This would be things like day trading, option trading, or even trading into meme coins. That's straight up gambling. That's not investing. However, finding good, established, profitable companies and betting on their long-term future, that's not gambling. That is how you build wealth. And remember, all we're doing is we're doing the same things that keep making billionaires rich. Another amazing thing about the stock market is the taxes on it. Now, we've all heard, billionaires don't pay any taxes. That's because the vast majority of their wealth is actually tied up in assets, shares, or stocks, ownership of companies that they have invested in or that they built. And stocks, shares, whatever, they are only taxed on what you make in profit, and they're only taxed when you decide to sell out of those shares. Again, you only pay taxes on gains when you sell. And throughout history, the S&P 500 will double in value every 5 to 7 years. Remember, completely tax-free unless you sell them. Now, there are some ways for us to invest consistently into a retirement account, and then whenever we reach retirement age, we will pay zero taxes on any gains that we have, even when we sell them. The way to do this is through something called a Roth IRA. It is a kind of retirement account that if you buy stocks throughout your working career, by the time you reach retirement age, you can withdraw as much of that as you want completely tax-free. Profits are completely tax-free. So here's a tax example about stocks. If you buy $5,000 worth of stock over the course of a year, and then by next year, the value of those have increased to $6,000, if you decided to sell out of all of them, you will only be paying taxes on that $1,000 of profit that you've made, not on the entirety of it, only the profit and only when you sell. Doing this is not going to magically make us billionaires overnight. However, doing this will allow us to keep up with inflation. It will allow us to grow our wealth and actually build something for the future instead of always being left in the dust and being worse off every single year than we were before. So, in a recap, the system is 100% rigged against us, and there's not a lot we can do about that because the people who benefit from the rules are the ones who are making the rules. They will tell us we can vote to change things, but I've seen Democrats and Republicans in office, nothing changes and nothing gets better. At least it hasn't in my life, or my parents, or my grandparents. But you can ask your own family if things seem easier today financially than they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Because remember, there was a point in time in America's history that a single income household without a college degree could afford to buy a home. A lot of people can't even afford a home with both partners working. Another thing to remember, the government is always going to keep printing money, and this money will always flow to the top 1%, the ones holding the assets, the ones holding the fixed assets. Inflation will always erode your cash value, and the rich are going to stay winning. However, we can play that game too. We can buy those same exact assets that the rich are using to get richer because they're all publicly available in the stock market. We can all open up a brokerage account. We can all start cutting expenses so we can have extra income to invest. Because in reality, if you're not investing in the stock market, you're just going to get left behind because the government's not here to help you. They never have been and they never will. But you can help yourself. You can guarantee a better future for both yourself, your family, and be an example and show others around you. Remember, you can own a tiny piece of these companies. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this video put some things into perspective. I'm not a political channel. I'm not going to tell you who I voted for, but I am going to tell you neither side are really here to help us because they have their own interest in mind. You need to have yours. If you found value, if you thought this was entertaining, please give me a like, comment, subscribe, and share it with someone else because we're not trying to get rich quick. We're just trying to make sure we keep up with things. Thank y'all.